Here we go. Recording is started. This is the March 5th, 2026 Crossplane community meeting. I will go ahead and drop a link in the Zoom chats now to the agenda document if you all don't have it. Now you've got it, and you can jump in here and go ahead and add any agenda items you might want to discuss, or any comments, or add yourself as an attendee today. All is well, all is good. We welcome anybody's additions here. So let's jump into first releases, backlog releases here. Adam, do you want to talk about this? You were the release manager for 2.2. Do you want to go ahead and just give us a quick check-in for folks that haven't upgraded yet and want to know what to expect in 2.2?
Sure. Yeah, V2.2 is out. I did the release from an airplane, which was cool. So that was fun. And yeah, there's a handful of new features. I think the big ones are listed here. Function pipeline debugger is there, so you can get an export of your function requests and responses. The functions can now request open API schemas. So if you've got a function that wants to validate resources or whatever, it can do that. I think one thing lots of people were waiting for was this image config one. You can configure a deployment runtime config for all or a subset of your packages using image configs. So this kind of fixes the issue where you couldn't set a deployment runtime config for packages that were installed as dependencies. And then a couple CLI improvements around trace and lots of new docs. I think there was some breaking change, but I forget what it was. Can you pop open the release notes there, Jared? Yes. So the two important changes to know about in case you're relying on them. These are both in the category of like emergent behavior rather than well-defined behavior, but I know people are depending on them. So if you put anything in a function package now that you want installed into the cluster, it will not get installed. This is in keeping with the X package spec, but previously we were not following it, so people might be depending on that behavior. Similarly, we now do allow packages to be installed if they contain invalid things. We just don't install the invalid things. So we're a little looser on our validation, which hopefully is helpful more than harmful. The other one here is that the on-disk structure of the package cache changed. So if you want to side load a package into Crossplane by putting it into the cache, you can still do it. It just the details have changed. So I know people were relying on that for testing in particular. I think that's about it for 2.2.
Yeah, and I haven't heard any feedback from anybody that was depending on that function input quote unquote CRD to be installed. So I'd definitely be interested to hear if folks have run into that, but I have not heard anything about that yet myself. And then Adam, thanks again for running that release. Yeah, I think that was probably the first release that was done from an airplane. So that's a first from all around for many different reasons. And then we also had the function SDK Go was I missed the Python one too. The Python SDK was also released, so both Go and Python SDKs are released that are compatible with 2.2 that also add support into the SDKs for being able to functions to request schemas from Crossplane of give Crossplane a number of types. It'll give you back the schemas for them if you need them, and then understanding what capabilities the runtime of Crossplane that you're running against has. So those are baked into the SDKs now, so they're easy to access and easy to use. All right. So those are releases that I'm aware of within core Crossplane stuff. And so now we're just started into the 2.3 milestone. A couple months away still. We haven't created a release date release issue in a specific release date yet, but we're targeting May of 2026. So a couple months from now still. We can take a look at the board, but there's not actually there's kind of a fair amount of stuff on there. Yeah, okay. Yeah, already busy with a bunch of stuff going on there. Some of it's carryover from 2.2 that didn't get hit, but board is active, things going on there. Let's take a look at kind of the high level areas where we're going to be focusing. So The efforts from SIG CLI will be ramping up significantly now that we've got 2.2 shipped. And Adam has a full section on those details later on that we'll get into. So we'll talk about that later. We do have an open PR that did not land for 2.2 around the foot gun sort of scenario that we've had for years in Crossplane. If like a provider gets accidentally deleted that was in use, all the CRDs go with it, all the resources get to go with it as well. It could cause accidental deletion of resources. So that's been a long-standing thing. And Christopher Har has worked on a webhook that'll basically an admission webhook that'll stop that from happening. If resources are in use by a provider, then the provider can't be deleted. So a little bit of protection from that did not land in 2.2, but I expect it to land in 2.3. And then Chris will give us an update, a bigger, deeper update next month, I think, about the Crossplane state metrics experience. There's been some progress on that. And, we'll talk more about that later on, but, basically being able to be very specific about all the different types of metrics and observability stuff you might want out of Crossplane and having experience around that. Chris has been working with the upstream Kubernetes group around the resource state metrics there. And so having something, an experience and documentation and understanding how to use that in Crossplane is going to be a focus for this release as well. And then we're overdue for some maturing of various APIs in Crossplane. There's a whole bunch of, if you look at like the feature lifecycle project we have linked here, there's a whole bunch of things that are still in alpha, things that are in beta that need to go to GA. So I'm thinking it's time to spend some time on investing in those. I think that'll be a good investment for people to be able to functionality that's been working for them, and they're relying on it to be able to kind of continue maturing it so they're ready to use it in production as well.
Like a fallback.
What else? Lovro.
Yeah, I was saying like a fallback.
No, I don't think so.
Don't get exactly what you want.
But yeah, so we're gonna also Bob, you're on the call here. Do you want to kind of give us a quick check in on the management policy stuff that we were able to get aligned on for 2.2?
Yeah, I mean, there's some finer grained controls I think that are needed in the management policies, both for compatibility with the deletion policy that management policies were intended to replace, and for scenarios like when you want Crossplane to create the resource and it should not adopt an existing resource. It should fail if the resource already exists. So, those are things that are just at a finer level of detail than whether or not the policy should actually be enabled or not. I think there's maybe a bit of a conflict in saying that you want to allow the deletion policy, but you want it to also orphan. That's kind of weird, but it does make the migration from deletion policy a heck of a lot simpler. Because today, if you want to go from deletion policy orphan to management policies, you basically have to analyze the existing management policies and remove the deletion policy from it, and then put back whatever's left. And that's kind of really ugly in terms of a migration path. So I thought it would be cleaner to just have a deletion configuration or something like that, that allows for things to, you can still have the deletion policy enabled, but it won't actually call the delete method. So I'm still not entirely happy with that. So if anybody has any suggestions on how to migrate an existing, deletion policy to management policies in that scenario, I'd be glad to hear about it.
Yeah, thanks for that update, Bob. And once again, also thanks for the collaboration on the sort of late, revert and late in the game on 2.2 to kind of figure out what we wanted to do there. So Lovro's committed to spending time with you on this in 2.3. And, if we can't come up with a better option, then, basically ship what you wanted to ship in 2.2. So thank you for your collaboration on that, Bob. I appreciate that. What else? What else? What else? I already feel like I got a whole bunch of things already slated for this release again. Yeah, and I'd say the same vein of maturing some of the alpha and beta APIs, core reliability stuff is always really important. And then community contributions as well too, right? You can see on the release board we were just at there, there's a bunch of things in there in review. So we need to keep pushing on those, getting some of the great contributions from the community in there as well, because that's obviously if people take the time to improve or fix an issue or something like that, it's important enough for them that they want to see it happen, right? So we do want to keep pushing on those as well. So that's kind of early in the 2.3 cycle. I think some more clarity will come as we continue to move through the cycle there and keep investing in stuff. And anything from anybody else about 2.3 before we move on? All right, let's talk about ecosystem stuff. So Alper added a bunch of content here, but isn't able to make it today. So I'll just talk through this really quickly. So there's been some effort to kind of continue automating and streamlining the CVE remediation efforts on a bunch of the ecosystem projects, functions, and providers. So we'll start seeing those happen more often, faster, et cetera, and taking less manual effort. So I think there's a very nice investment being made there to make that cheaper of a less expensive burden for the maintainers of many feature projects, providers, and functions. So continue to see that, to see more progress on that. A whole bunch of releases that we're not going to talk through all through here. But folks have shared some of the recent releases, then we'll throw it in here. Theo, do you want to talk about the Xbrand release though? Because that was something you added and it was the first stable release there. Do you want to talk about that real quick? Oh, Theo said that you cannot talk about it right now. Not because it's secret, but because I assume you can't get off mute while you're commuting or something like that. But oh, the baby in the arms. Okay, even more focus on that, my friend. But yeah, so folks, if want to check this out, this is the first stable release of Xprint testing framework. Lots of cool stuff that was going on there. And check out the release notes and take it for a test spin. All right. And then quick note on provider update at AWS. There's some work going on right now to bump the underlying Terraform provider. People can follow along with that in this linked pull request if they're interested in. Oh, actually, it's been merged. That must have happened since this morning when we added this note. So good job, folks. Provider update at AWS is getting a bump on its underlying Terraform provider. So that's good news there. And then we had talked a while ago about the pretty big effort that went into adding more baked in or available capabilities to the upjet framework to be able to manage upgrades and breaking changes and migrations and all sorts of stuff of resources generated by upjet over time. So a really huge effort went into this. And then from a framework perspective, and then now we're seeing first PR that puts that into action is going in on Azure AD. So this would, if folks are maintainers on upjet related providers, this is probably something to pay attention to here, that this is the first practical application of all the upjet framework stuff for managing migrations of data, of resources across breaking changes and versions and stuff like that. So check out this to see a practical example of how to use the lifecycle management stuff from upjet, because I think it does unlock some scenarios that might have been pretty hard to do in the past. Okay, cool. So that's ecosystem stuff. If anybody has any other releases or anything to add, they can go ahead and put it into the doc here so folks can see that too. And then let's move on down to some of the community topics. Anna, you were on the call. Do you want to quickly talk about your first blog post for Crossplane?
Sure. I published my first blog post that talks about API first infrastructure, basically for folks trying to understand how Crossplane lands in the world of AI with folks vibe coding. What does that mean for infrastructure? And for those that are using Crossplane, it's an easy way to talk to humans and agents. So we kind of talk a little bit about like declarative control and like what Crossplane brings to the table for that. So more of like an awareness for those in the community that are learning about Crossplane and trying to see how this ties into their AI strategy.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to write this down, Anna, and to publish it. And I'm definitely looking forward to more content on the Crossplane blog and other channels from you. So thanks for your first one there, and looking to see more.
Thanks.
Always more, right? Like, yeah, thanks for your first one. Do more. Always asking more. Sorry. All right. And then there was also a Cloud Native Live event that happened, I think that was last week. It was very, very recent that Yuri and Jay. Yuri, are you on the call here? You were on that, right? So you were part of the Cloud Native Live event with the CNCF. Do you want to kind of add on to that, or it's kind of some of the similar messaging from Anna's blog post, perhaps?
Yeah, we ran the demo together with Jay. So the main topic was AI as in form of operations as an additional logic injection on top of declarative control planes. So my part of the demo was very similar to what I already demoed in this Crossplane community meeting like a couple of weeks ago, maybe more, months ago, right?
That's
So
right.
like it's monthly meeting, yeah, months ago. And but I use like a little bit polished way. I found like how to stress the database properly with MySQL Slab. So if you need to stress your databases, you can use a tooling called MySQL Slab, and it helped me a lot to trigger the auto-scaling event. So AA operation worked nicely, and everything went up and down properly. And Jay did a nice case of Kubernetes controller written in plain English, right? So similar idea, focused on a local execution, also cross-plane based, enhanced with AI operations. So yeah.
Who should we add?
What was the question?
That was me, Yuri. Sorry. Keep going.
No worries. Yeah, so that's it. Couple of demos. Scroll through them. Give us feedback. All the reference platforms are available in a public repos. So check them out, play with them, give us feedback. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Yuri and Jay for also for doing that Cloud Native Live event with the CNCF. It's nice to have that artifact there for folks to check that out. All right. So KubeCon Amsterdam is coming up. I believe, yeah, it's coming up fast enough that before the next community meeting, we will have been to Amsterdam. So a whole bunch of stuff going on there. We got more opportunities here than we've ever had before, including the keynote video that with Victor's face on the big keynote stage. So that'll be pretty exciting. Lots of talks as well for both the main events, co-located events. There's some at Rejects as well too. So a whole bunch of Crossplane stuff going on in Amsterdam. If you're fortunate enough to be there, come hang out with us. We'd love to see you. And then some folks have already responded, but another plug here for we have the Crossplane the booth in the CNCF Project Pavilion area. We have the full-time booth this time for the entire day during the conference there. So we have a lot of time hanging out there because we're a graduated project now. And we would love for any community folks, if you're going to be there, feel free to reach out to me, and you can hang out for, schedule yourself to be there for an hour or 2 hours, whatever, however long you want to be there. We would more than welcome accept all community members who want to come meet other people, keep on, talk about Crossplane, share your experience, etc. So just reach out to me, and we'll get you some time at the booth there with the rest of the team.
Sounds good.
All right. So other news, steering committee election. I think since the last community meeting, we had the steering committee election. And so the last update on that is that Jared and Bassam re-won their seats. I am Jared, you know me, and you know Bassam, one of the creators of the project as well. And then Joel Cookland from Nike joins us in the steering committee as well. So those 3 seats were up for election. Those are the 3 winners. And I really wanted to thank everybody again for everyone who was nominated, everyone who participated in the election. Thank you so much for that. Excited to have the steering committee locked and loaded for another year together. I think we've got really good end user adoption represented on the committee. So it's really nice to see that, and looking forward to another year working with Bob and Brian, Angel, and Bassam, and I guess myself as well. But we're excited by the other folks. All right. I just wanted to call this out for folks so people are aware of it, and then especially that community maintainers can take a look at their own repositories that they're maintainers for as well. Yuri first pointed out this to me earlier this week, but there's quite an interesting article about a AI agent bot kind of running amok and exploiting some vulnerabilities in GitHub Actions in various open source community repositories outside the Crossplane project, but some CNCF projects were hit by it. So we went through all of the various hacks, exploits that are mentioned in this article. They're really quite interesting. The basic gist of it is that if you have some overly permissive GitHub Actions workflows, and you have you're not too safe with contributors coming by, opening their PRs, and essentially running stuff from their fork that could be malicious, then you're in for a bad time. So we did a full audit of the core Crossplane runtime repos, et cetera. And there were none of those exploits were we specifically vulnerable to, but we did do a couple of PRs to harden and further reinforce ourselves from being able to be exploited in the future. So you can check out some of those PRs there. But the real ask here is if you're a community extension project maintainer, take a look at these PRs, see what we did there, and then try to incorporate that into your repositories as well, so that we just have an overall hardening across all of our repositories in the ecosystem of Crossplane. And specifically the PR to minimize permissions on workflows was a community PR. So thank you very much for the contributors for that. All right, Adam, do you want to give us a quick catch up here on the rapidly increasing progress of SIG CLI now?
Yeah, so once we cut 2.2, we were able to merge some changes here. So the APIs directory in Crossplane is now a separate Go module. So anybody who's consuming that outside of the Crossplane repo, there will be a little bit of adjustment to do there. But what this lets us do is now decouple APIs from Crossplane runtime, and that'll let us move things that depend on the APIs into Crossplane runtime so that we can share them across projects, and in particular use them in the CLI when it moves into its own repository. So most pressing example maybe is the X package library that we use for parsing and building X packages. That is used in core Crossplane. It's also used in the CLI and in other projects. So we'll be able to move this into Crossplane runtime where it probably should be, since it's more generally useful than just in the core. So yeah, next step is up for PR. There's still a couple hoops to jump through before we're there, but we're getting there. I am also about to start working on initial DevX features. Obviously, some of this will be code moving from the Upbound CLI, since we built DevX there already, but with some reworking, because I think we have made some improvements in the design through collaboration with the community here. So I'm going to start working on that. Definitely the goal is to have something to share at KubeCon, even if it's not fully merged and ready. But I would love for people to be able to play with it and for us to demo it and chat about it at KubeCon when folks are looking at it. And Theo, I saw you had a question in the chat. Yes, my plan is to move stuff into the new repo before we add the DevX tooling. In the next 3 weeks before KubeCon, I will probably build stuff in the Crossplane repo just for expediency, but not planning to merge it there. I'll plan to merge it when we move into the new repo. Any questions there, or I think otherwise we're good.
All right. Awesome. Cool. And then definitely looking forward to showing off the work there in Amsterdam. Either you, Adam, doing it yourself if your plane lands on time, or me showing it instead. But someone's going to show it, and it'll be exciting. All right. Cool. Eric, I bumped this up so that we'll save the demo stuff for last. You want to talk about the cloud provider as well too?
Yeah, really just had opened a request to be able to bring that, like look at a community repo going for it, Crossplane contribute repo going for it, and just trying to wonder about expectations and getting this actually moving so that we can bring in the upjet version of this and get it up to date, because the old Cloudflare provider hasn't been touched in 5 years. So
Right, Eric. Yes, thank you for bringing this up, and thank you for your effort on it as well. I think that's going to be a net win for sure for the community. And I recall looking at this a couple weeks ago and was excited about it. So yes, this was this. I don't think there's any holdup on this, Eric. So let me take a note to follow up ASAP. Then, since you're taking the time to write the code, to donate it, and to show up here as well too, to continue showing your support, Eric. Yeah, like I owe you a follow up here, so let me definitely do that. And I don't think there should be any holdups, man.
wonderful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you for sure. Awesome. Yeah, and that's such a great example too of like when there's community needs and community steps up to try to fill it in. It's just fantastic. So love to see it. All right, Philippe, floor is to you,
Yep.
my friend. Let me
Thank
stop
you.
sharing here so you can start sharing and do what
Yeah,
you wish, my
thank you.
friend. All you.
Yeah, super quick demo. So as mentioned earlier, we just introduced a functionality into upstream Crossplane, which allows to uh, set up Crossplane to send all the requests and responses that is going to send to and got back from composition functions to something else. As a reference implementation, we have already built and open sourced a logger implementation, just log into standard out, both in human readable format or in JSON format. All the requests and responses coming through. We know composition functions are hard, so we're trying to give a little bit more insight in what's going on there. And this is built on top of the same approach that we had for cloud changelogs in the providers that were shipped some time ago, and that are actually a gRPC interface that you can implement, and providers in that case, and in this case Crossplane, is sending stuff over through a local socket. Obviously, security sensitive stuff could go through the pipes in a pipeline, and so we try to sanitize and clean up all the things that we could think of in the upstream. So Crossplane should not be sending stuff over that is sensitive. There were things that we know can be a little bit like you could put whatever you want into the context, for example. So that's not something we already in this first implementation are cleaning up. There are thoughts around improving on that side, but we'll see. Definitely, whatever receives these requests and responses can filter out further the inputs before sending them out to whatever system you like to send them to. But for now, we are doing the best we can. So the reference implementation I want to show right now, it's pretty straightforward to install. There is a build package. We just change the version here to the latest one, which is 0.0.3, and then pass a few more arguments enabling the new feature. This is only from 2.2 on. So only in the latest version. Otherwise, this flag will crash Crossplane. And then through the various knobs you have in the hand chart values, just set up a sidecar container with this inspector, wire it up to receive stuff through the configured socket. And then in the end, what you get is actually a bunch of logs, which if we try to parse using JSON, you can see, using JQ, you can see we have the whole everything going through. They're split between requests and responses because we send them over as soon as they get. So we don't lose anything, and we are sending over both requests and responses for all steps in a pipeline. And so, for example, if you create something, let's say as you can see here, we have a second sidecar inside Crossplane, so that's how it's actually working. Then I have set up a small example. Say I add one more replica to one of my XR resources, and we see that stuff starts flowing through, and we have a third resource which is not ready yet, while the previous three are actually ready. And then at some point, we also see it become ready through. And so you can see everything going on. It's a lot of data. You might need something at the end to handle it properly and to make the most out of it. But if you know what you're looking for, you can definitely grab through it and find exactly the information you want and why your composition function is not behaving the way you were expecting it to behave. We are using already the span terminology, span and trace ID terminology. We didn't end up implementing full trace and span support in Crossplane, but we left the door open to if we ever decide to instrument the whole code base to generate spans and traces to actually use those IDs in here too, so that you can correlate them in whatever system using the hotel terminology, let's say. Yeah, that's it. It's mostly about visibility. So it's what you do downstream is the main thing, and this is just the reference implementation. You can re-implement the same interface and do add your own logic if you want and send it to your own systems and so on and so forth. Any questions?
And Philip, were you showing like the configuration for it? That was directly in the Crossplane Helm chart itself. Is that the way to configure this, or is there other means?
Yes, these are we added also a knob to allow injecting sidecars through the Crossplane Helm chart in the 2.2 release. So now you can just like these are additions to the values you can pass and when you install Crossplane, and so you can get it running straight through the Helm chart, the upstream Helm chart. That's it. There are no other questions. Back to you, Jared.
All right. Let's see. I believe that was the end of the scheduled agenda here. Wait, Bob, did you add a? Did I copy this from a previous?
I've just got
Make sure
one
my
PR that I've been trying to get approved for a while.
Let me try to find out how to
Just so
share my
somebody
screen
can take a look
again.
at it.
Hold on. All right, back to here. Where is this one? Function code templating. Gotcha. Okay, so there's been. Oh, I guess Adam approved it, but Adam's not an official maintainer there. Is
Yeah.
that the deal? Adam, you're untrustworthy. I'm sorry.
I thought about just making him a maintainer, but you know.
Adam, do you want to be a maintainer on function code templating?
I would be happy to. It is somewhere I've worked before, and it's definitely DevX relevant as well, since we build a DevX on top of it. So yeah, I would be I would not be against becoming a maintainer here if it's helpful.
Voila, bringing folks together, one community meeting at a time. Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Good. So, yeah. So hopefully there, won't be too much friction on getting this PR in. Adam can help out with future ones as well. So it's an area. I heard Adam say that Go templating is a strong passion of his.
I know. I heard the same thing. Yeah.
It's the way I interpreted that. So perfect.
Thanks.
Sounds good. Okay, sweet. And then that is the last agenda item that I had on here. Anything else folks want to bring up before we adjourn for the week? All right. 3, 2, 1. John, you came off mute. You need anything, my friend?
I'm having a thought and I'm wondering if this is the right venue for it.
Let's
So I just
explore.
onboarded, I just onboarded like 5,000 resources into Crossplane over the past couple of months. And
Great.
we're talking about DevX a lot on the CLI, but also elsewhere. And the DevX of onboarding those resources is not great. We
Were
have
they managed
to
somewhere else first, John, or are they like brand new resources that are being created?
managed by it's a combination of Terraform and an internal tool, which kind of sort of resembles Chef.
Got it.
Um,
Fair enough.
so we're migrating from all that stuff into Crossplane. And we just had probably the biggest data loss outage that the company has had in some years because of a trying to onboard a load balancer and somebody there was a there's sort of a flaw in the state machine, right? Our internal implementation of the state machine that uh, we had. I think we ended up like stripping a header or something like that that caused a bunch of stuff to get bounced without being acknowledged as being bounced. Um, and something at the provider level. So like I'm the guy that wrote the diff tool, right? Um, something at the provider level that would tell me that, hey, when I apply this thing, it's going to change what's in Amazon. I know we've talked about that like kind of at length in a bunch of different threads in Crossplane, like how do we sort of preview changes? Diff only gets you so far. Um, so I don't know how far in the future we're thinking about giving some consideration to how we would tackle that problem.
So this might be a naive question, John, because I don't understand the context fully. But one thing I'm curious about is if for this particular load balancer resource and the managed resource that represents it, if it was in a state of being like observe only for basically just read operations, the management policies, would there have been, is this the type of thing that would have shown a delta between the spec for provider and the status at provider, or it would not have showed up there?
Yes. So the state machine that we have internally is a bit kludgy, and that's one of the other reason I kind of wanted to raise this. We imported an observe mode, and then we write down all the code that we think needs to be there to represent it as an MR, as an XR, and then it gets rendered through the composition out to the MR. So we write all that stuff down. We push it in observe only mode, so it can't actually make any changes, and then we switch the provider config to a config that only has access to writing tags, because Crossplane does try to change tags when you onboard something. And so once we're running as a user that can only tag stuff, then we switch the state machine to a managed mode, right, where it will try to write stuff. And so at that point, if you get errors while the user has permission to tag but nothing else, the fact that there is an error that happens, you get a 403 from Amazon or whatever, comes back and says, you can't do that. That's our only indicator, right? That there is a diff when we're trying to like onboard this resource. And then you have to go from there and you have to trace backwards to like, okay, well, what thing was it trying to change versus what's there in the cloud? And that's not a great onboarding experience. So I wonder if there's some like, I wonder if there's a way to do better than that. There's got to be a way to do better than that.
And Judd, so is that confirming then that like because you're relying on essentially a very scoped set of permissions or auth for the resource before you flip the bits there that can only do tagging, and you're hoping to see that if it's trying to write to something it shouldn't be writing to, then it would get a 403. If you're relying on that, is that confirmation then that like there was not a delta, a noticeable difference between the status spec provider and status?
If it then succeeds while the role that it's using has only permission to tag, then that's a confirmation that that there's no delta. It's not trying to write a change in Amazon.
Interesting. And so is your instincts now from everything you've looked at here, like is your instincts that this is a potential bug in terms of like the data that gets surfaced in the, the API object, or is it a bug in, how the provider does its CRUD operations against the cloud, or is it something else? Or
No, so there was no bug with Crossplane here, right? In the way that uh, our specific issue occurred. I guess I'm conflating a couple of different things, right? There was the issue that we had where we had data loss because the state machine is complicated. Basically, there was a human failure involved in transitioning through that state machine, and that's why we had the issue that we had. But also the fact that there is no straightforward way without going through an entire state machine like manually to onboard this stuff. That's kind of the DevX problem, right? That I have to go through, you know, 2, 3, 4 states of things in my GitOps before I can actually get to maintaining a resource that is ostensibly going to be owned by Crossplane for the long term.
yeah.
I wonder, would there be value? I mean, today the Crossplane runtime, the managed interface has a resource up to date or is up to date or something in like flag like that gets returned from the observe method. I'm wondering if there would be value in exposing that either in status or in a condition or something, so that when you're in observe mode, you could tell whether there's any deltas or not. Because observe is gonna do the observation and compare, and then basically that is
there
up
would be
to
tremendous
date.
value in that.
Yeah, I mean that is up to date. Information is there to call the update method, but if you're not calling the update method, it's pretty much lost.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
maybe
that would be really
maybe that
useful
would
for
be
our
a
case.
like an up to date condition or something that
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
And that also kind of jogs the memory too of like, is this something that change logs would have been able to catch? Like as well of like, hey, look, I'm going to try to do this. There's a delta here, so that's why I would try to do an update operation. I wonder if that would have helped catch this as well. That doesn't necessarily like, hey, like say, John, like, yes, that would make this easier, and the state machine needs to be less complicated. Certainly not saying that, but I wonder if that's another element that could perhaps catch this.
Well, Bob's idea of reporting that back on observe mode, that does remove one state from the machine, and it is the fiddliest state because it's not because it's a state where you have to mess with the provider config permissions specifically instead of just like the mode on the MR.
Yeah.
I'll open a ticket in Crossplane runtime and flush that out.
Nice. Yeah, and I would definitely like to, John, if you have any sort of like ideas about like what would the ideal experience be, like what would we like to see, and can maybe possibly work back from that as well too.
So from a approaching this from a Terraform perspective, right? Because that's where the infrastructure is right now.
Mhm.
If like so every Terraform provider has Terraform import. And you import something and then it becomes a member of your state file. And then there is still sort of there's still a second pass that has to happen in Terraform because you have to grab that code and you have to reflect it in your MR. But in Crossplane, at least in some of the providers, the for provider and the at provider will never converge because there's stuff on the at provider that doesn't go in for provider. So for instance, if you have a security group in Amazon, right, we have a security group object, and then that reflects back all the rules to you when you query the at provider. But you can't write those down in the for provider. You have to actually like parse them out and put them into individual rule objects because the security group itself is composed of all those rules at the crossplane like control plane layer. So I wonder if is there some kind of a command line tool or something like that that we can that should be built to like extract an MR from a resource that is already in the cloud.
There's been historically a lot of interest in that around easier importing, streamlining it, and like so there's a couple different ways to look at it. One could be like a tool that helps with that, and other things are like around how do you match to an existing external resource within Crossplane in general, and how, like, are there possible ways to find that resource and discover it more easily with, like, querying, filtering type of stuff. So there's a couple different angles to go about it. Possibly the tool one might be the one that it strikes a better chord with your scenario here, because it kind of streamlines some of the steps. But yeah, there's definitely been historical interest in that, though, I would say that. And I was just pulling this up too, by the way, just to look in the manage reconciler what the up-to-date check does for when a provider does their observe method. And so something that's interesting is that there's, I don't know exactly how this works here, but there's metrics for, like, recording that that's happening, that the resource is up to date as well too. I don't know what labels it gets, and if you could actually, like, extract that. Is that just like a general counter, or, like, you can tell actually specifically if that resource is unchanged from that way? So potentially, Bob and John, there might be a way to look to get this information without exposing it as a condition, but that might be kludgy as well too, of course. And then also, if I don't know if providers actually do this or not, that's not going to be 100% thing for sure. But from the observe call, they actually, in debug mode, it'll log out what its diff that it even found was. So that's potentially another angle to look at here too.
Yeah, I think whatever thing it is that we end up doing probably should be exposed as state on the object. Because if I am if I'm a developer and I'm trying to onboard my stuff into Crossplane, I am probably not in the Crossplane control plane logs messing around. I probably am looking at the object that I have tried to add into Crossplane. So I think that's probably the right scope for it, would be like as a condition or something analogous. Even if it's not there right now, I think that seems like a useful addition.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
So we could probably build some automation around that fact.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, cool. It's been a little bit since I looked at this code here, but it's coming back very fast. The manage reconcile loop is a bit of a beast, but I do quite like how it's organized and very, very clear to follow, at least. Okay, cool. So Bob, you said you were going to open up an issue on Crossplane runtime, just to kind of explore further, like exposing a condition around if something's truly up to date or not from the provider's perspective. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. All right. That sounds like a reasonable next step there to kind of keep exploring the idea. And then John, to also, if because you did write the diff tool, if you happen to go start writing something that does this stuff, we'll gladly accept the contribution to Crossplane Contrib again, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take that. I mean, the next logical evolution of being able to preview your changes is something that touches a lot more than it's much more than contrib, right? It's some kind of a provider API or feedback loop or something that said that basically is, observe mode at the provider level. So it's a plan, right?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
And yes, that is quite hard.
Absolutely.
That's why it's not done yet. If it was easy, I would have done it already.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Well, yeah, thanks for bringing that up, John. And thanks for the discussion. All right, cool. Well, then I guess that's everything. So we can go ahead and wrap it up here. Thanks everybody for being here today. And thanks, Philippe, for showing off the function pipeline stuff. Looking forward to seeing more as we make progress in the 2.3 milestone. Cool. All right, everybody. Take care. Bye.